Hey,
How's it going?
good. How about you?
I'm good. How's the sound over there?
Sounds good. I can hear you. Am I coming through all right?
Yeah, you're good on my end.
Perfect.
All right. So, Mr. Geoffrey Krug, we've got you here. So,
And you go by Tommy? Tom?
either one, really. Rune King Tom, some people. No, not really, but uh, fun way to introduce myself. So yeah, we get this thing rolling.
Sounds
So,
good.
so I guess I asked this before, but I'll ask again. Most important question: how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well.
Yeah, you just came back from, was that silver medal at under 25s?
Yeah, yeah. So I got silver in the total. Is it silver in the snatch and bronze in the clean and jerk as well.
And you're under 61 kilos?
Yep.
Yeah. So you put on some size since you were here.
Yeah, yeah. So probably my biggest biggest problem when I was at Cornell was keeping my body weight up. I kind of was 56 and then lost weight. I was down to 50, like 51 probably at my lowest. And then back up. I got up to 61 actually briefly. The summer after my junior year, I gained a lot of weight and I came back to Cornell and 6 months later I was back to 55. So yeah,
How tall are you?
5'5".
Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah, for
I could
reference,
be here
huh?
still.
You could be heavier, but you have
Yeah,
a better excuse for being 61 kilos than I would.
it's true. Yeah.
So what got you into lifting?
Um, so actually, my I didn't lift until my senior year of high school at all, and so it was a mandatory gym class in order to graduate. You had to take well, you're supposed to take one your junior and senior year, but I actually just took two gym classes my senior year, and the class was just strength and conditioning. It was like a really open ended. They put you in the gym, and you can do whatever you want. They have barbells. They had bumper plates. It was a pretty good setup. So that's how I kind of got started. Bodybuilding like most guys, I think. But I saw some people doing cleans on the platform, and I thought that looks pretty cool. And from there I tried to learn that and just kind of fell in love with it.
So that's what led you to pursue Olympic lifting over, I guess, I mean, if you can call high school lifting bodybuilding. Um, because
Yeah, yeah, bodybuilding.
yeah,
That's a word. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I do remember actually one thing was I had gone home and I told my dad that I was learning to do cleans, and he showed me a video from the 1988 Olympics of Naeem Soleimanu, who's probably the greatest of all time in the sport. And he said he was a 60-kilo lifter, about 4'10". He clean and jerked 190 kilos. It's the heaviest body weight to or clean and jerk to body weight ratio in the history of the sport. And I just saw that video and I thought, man, that's so cool. I want to do it. And that's kind of where I went from learning just to do cleans to saying, okay, I'm going to learn the snatch and the jerk and kind of do the whole thing.
that's 190 kilos is
Yeah,
ridiculous at any size.
yeah,
For
yeah,
people who don't deal in kilos, that's 420 pounds, or I guess 418. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, he also he snatched 152.5, which makes him the only person in the history of competitive weightlifting to snatch over 2.5 times body weight in competition.
Once again, I'll do the conversion for people. That's about 340 pounds. That's that's a lot for someone at any size, really, but at his size particularly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And I mean, anyone who's watching, if you haven't seen the video, haven't heard of Naeem Soleimanu, I encourage you to look it up. You can look up his name's a bit hard to spell, but if you look up the Pocket Hercules, that was his
Oh
nickname.
wait, I know who that guy. Did he also do powerlifting?
I don't know if he ever did powerlifting. He was, I don't know if actually powerlifting wasn't as big of a sport. I mean, this was 88.
Yeah, I've heard of the
But
Pocket Hercules.
yeah, he's really incredible. I mean, just like I said, I think pretty easily the greatest of all time in weightlifting.
Yeah. So do you find, because you've also competed in powerlifting, I'm a bit of a nerd. I've gone through all the old spreadsheets and everything. Uh, but you've done powerlifting, you've done weightlifting.
Mm.
Which one do you, I mean, do you enjoy the sort of the brute force of powerlifting, or do you like the technical aspects of weightlifting more?
I enjoy powerlifting. I do find that the technical stuff in weightlifting is kind of more fun for me, but and I don't really like benching. Um, maybe my biggest problem with powerlifting, but yeah, I enjoy powerlifting. I just weightlifting the technical aspect really did appeal to me.
So we've got a question from an anonymous vice president in the group in the chat. So yeah, what do you think is the hardest part of cleans for you?
Um, I think I think it's really the same as every other lift in that it's a bit of psychological. When you really get the technique down and you're kind of diving, under everything, snatches, cleans, jerks. It's a bit of a kind of leap of faith. You have to, because it feels really heavy. If you're doing maximum clean, it's really heavy off the ground. When you pull it, and even the second pull, you feel like that bar hasn't gone up at all. Uh, so just kind of having the grit and the kind of confidence to dive under the bar, really receive it in a full squat. I think that's probably the hardest. I mean, there's a lot of hard things, just technique work, getting your pull correct. But I think that's the big one. Just it's a lot of confidence, a lot of just kind of doing it.
I think what's interesting about Olympic weightlifting, especially the level that you do it, is someone like me, I just brute force it up there. I move the bar to my chest. You move yourself under the bar,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Would you say that's a fair distinction?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. It's when people are starting out, you start out doing power cleans, power snatches. It's technically easier, and yeah, but at a high level, you have to be comfortable really diving under the bar is going up, but it's not going up very far. So you gotta get under there. It's a lot of flexibility. That's part like a lot of people. I've kind of helped people get started in Olympic lifting, and the big things are shoulder mobility. Even some people struggle with getting into a front rack when they're really deep. You have to have
That's me.
kind of shoulder mobility for that as well. And then the other thing being just the movement pattern. It feels very wrong until you've done it for a while and you kind of progressively start catching a little lower, and eventually you're able to get down under. But yeah, that's
Well, you also start, 'cause I've seen your videos. Some of them are still up here on the Barbell Club Instagram page, but you also start really low. Like your butt's basically touching the ground. And I've seen some comments not necessarily making fun of you for that, but it
yeah.
you're low.
Yeah, so I've always been pretty mobile in hips and hamstrings and all that, and so yeah, I've actually at least once for sure, on a clean, I kind of moved my feet out a little too far when I was messing around with my technique, trying new things, and I moved my feet a little too far, and I hit the ground. I felt my butt hit the platform. And I've come close. I have a few videos of me this far above the ground. So yeah, it's all mobility. A little bit being skinny also kind of helps actually to get really deep, because at a certain point your hamstrings and your quads will kind of give you a little cushion there at the bottom. But yeah.
So were you an athlete before this, or do you just learn from a gym class and go from there?
I did karate for a long time when I was growing up. In middle school, I wrestled for 2 years. High school, I did track for 3. But I never really achieved any like high level in those sports. Like I said, I mean, before lifting, I was really skinny, not kind of at my athletic potential, I would say. And so I think it helped. I think in terms of starting out with a good base of flexibility and proprioception. But weightlifting was the first sport that I guess I took seriously.
I mean, obviously you're excelling. You're second in the nation, right?
Well, under 25. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think weightlifting is a good sport for me compared. Well, wrestling may have been if I'd stuck with it, but track, my legs are too short to be a good runner. I mean, um, so it's a good sport for me. I think I have a lot of room to continue improving. After graduating, it's been a lot easier for me to stay with my body weight and train more consistently. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of room to go up. But
So what does your training look like when you're going for Olympic lifting?
so it's varied over the years. I generally do about 3 to 4 days a week. There have been periods where I did more, but 3 to 4 days a week. Training sessions are usually kind of structured the same way. So it'll be a pretty long training session, 2, 3 hours. Um, so I'll be doing some variation of squat every day, either back or front, usually. Some kind of clean or snatch complex, typically, or just some kind of progression. Um, some pulls as well, clean pulls, snatch pulls, and then some varying kind of GPP or bodybuilding stuff just to build the small muscles. But that's kind of the general formula. I get my programming from my coach, but that's also, I think, pretty typical for Olympic lifting in general, is that format. So it's just a combination technique work, strength work, and then kind of GPP work.
And so since you are our first Olympic weightlifting guest, could you go run through the difference between a clean and a snatch?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So the snatch is where, so I mean, both lift bar is going to start on the ground. The snatch, you'll take a wider grip, and in one motion, you'll lift the bar to over your head. So you'll receive it all the way up overhead. In the clean, it's a similar motion, and you're pulling the bar, you're kind of launching it up. But in the clean, you receive it at your shoulders in the front rack. And then the clean would be followed up with a jerk where you'll bring it overhead.
Makes sense. So does it ever bother you watching people like take football players, for example, do their power cleans and they look like me, just sort of muscling it up as opposed to getting under it technically?
I wouldn't say it bothers me. I find it a little amusing to see, but at the same time, I think it's very impressive when I see some, especially football players, they're moving around some really big weights with what, would be considered suboptimal technique, which kind of shows you. So my belief is that if you're an athlete who's doing the weightlifting movements for the purpose of developing power generation, that you don't actually have to worry that much about technique. There's no point in, spending all that time working on the finer points of weightlifting when what you really want out of it is that triple extension and building your power output. So, I do find it amusing kind of just to see, but I wouldn't say it bothers me.
So how much of weightlifting is technical versus power? Because from the outsider's perspective, it doesn't look like you're lifting. It looks like the bar is moving and suddenly you're underneath it.
It's that's a hard one. I'd say it's a lot of both. I mean, you have to have the technique. I mean, if you can't, even if you can lift a heavy weight, but you can only do it 1 out of 10 times, right? Because sometimes you're leaving the bar in front of you, sometimes behind you. That's not going to work in a competition because you get 3 attempts. So You have to have the technique, but the power and actually just raw strength is still a huge component. You know, the triple extension, I mean, that's all. Your bar height comes from your power. So if you don't have the power, you don't have the strength. It doesn't matter how good your technique is, right? You know, you're not going to lift very much. So it's really all three, but I don't know. I'd make an even split, I guess.
Now, the reason why I ask is last October there was a strongman who tore his tricep. And so, but what he's known for split jerking and the log press,
Okay,
which is more of a thing with the lighter classes. He used to be a middleweight guy and he moved up. And I remember saying to my friends how his left tricep's going to snap because he doesn't have the power to hold it up. Beautiful technique when he does it, but he just didn't quite have the power. And that's exactly the one that snapped off. It was his lead leg. That's where all the pressure went first, and that's the muscle group that snapped off. So
got
that's kind of why I ask about the power to technique, because technically speaking, he had it, but his body gave out because he didn't have the strength for it.
That's I hadn't heard about that. Yeah, it's like I said, you have to have it all, you know, to do it. It's definitely. I will say I appreciate seeing strongmen who actually do the jerk because biomechanically, you know, that's the most effective way to lift something over your head or from your shoulders to your head. So I know a lot of them push press. A lot of them don't quite have the technical or necessarily the flexibility to do a jerk, but it's cool. It's cool to see when they do it.
Yeah, there's you know Mikhail Kuklayev? He was an
Yeah, the name sounds familiar. Yeah,
eight-time Russian champion, then he transitioned to strongman.
yeah,
But
okay, yeah.
he's the one who really brought the split jerk into strongman.
Mhm.
Like around 2010 Worlds, he was keeping up with the log press world record holder by split jerking underneath it, and
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
it was funny to see because the people who push press like me, because I don't have the technical skill for it. They can kind of grind it out, and
Hmm.
might get caught here, but then you can push it all the way out. Whereas when Misha was going for it, he was getting it until he wasn't, and it just gave out.
Yeah, so that is kind of how it is. I mean, with the jerk and the snatch, you'll see it a lot. Like just a little bit of extra weight, and because again, you're kind of launching it and dropping and receiving. If it's just not quite high enough, usually, yeah, you won't be able to. You can press out. Well, but for strongman, you can press out. You can't in weightlifting, but it's unlikely to work out well. You kind of have to get the bar height to get on there properly.
Has anyone tried push pressing in a weightlifting? Just mess around, get
Uh,
disqualified, but go down a legend.
I don't know if I've ever seen it. Although if you go back far enough, in the 70s or before the 70s, the press was an official event, clean and press.
The bent press, right?
Um, what?
Bent press.
It was just clean and press. So it is a kind of interesting bit of weightlifting history. That originally, so the three events were snatch, clean and press, clean and jerk. Um, the problem with the press ended up being it's supposed to be like a strict upright press, but people found that it's if you can utilize your chest muscles a bit, you can press more weight. So they're doing these insane leaning back presses where the rules were your knees can't bend. So because that would be a push press, but in order to lean back so far, people were thrusting their hips forward, kind of bending their knees a bit, kind of push pressing a little bit, and eventually the problem was that the judging became so political because this is Cold War. And so the Soviet judges would be lenient on the Soviet lifters and the American judges on the American lifters. So they just dropped the entire clean and press as an event. It was just too hard to judge. And that's how now there's only the snatch and the clean and jerk.
And was that in 72 when they dropped that?
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 72 because you see pictures of people like I don't know if you know Paul Thomas Anderson or
Yeah.
Paul Anderson. Yeah, just 5'10", 350 pounds, and he's bent back like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just ridiculous.
Yeah, again, one of those, anyone watching, if you aren't familiar with this, go look up pictures of Olympic, the clean and press. It's insane what they were doing back then. And again, part of the reason it was banned also was the people were getting worried about back injuries. I mean, they were really, really, like when you think of like bench presses with a lot of arch, this is almost like that, but standing up. So it's insane. It's really cool to see the pictures though.
It's a standing incline press. There's someone in the chat who's a big fan of that. But yeah, and there was also that's still a problem today. Like one of the few clips of the CrossFit Games I saw was someone roasting them, Infinite Edge Intensity. I don't know if ever watched him,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was one of his roasts of the CrossFit Games. And you're talking about how people were trying to cheat the strict press, where they'd start up here, bounce it down, sort of create some momentum, and go up again like that. And I think that was also an issue, even with the bent back in the 60s.
Yeah, I could imagine. I know. So I know CrossFit. They've always had pretty lenient rules around most lifts. Like, for example, they allow press outs in the snatch and the clean and jerk. And what were you saying about the actual Olympic lifting reminded me of there's a rule nowadays, which is in the clean and jerk. When you're in this front rack, you're not allowed to intentionally oscillate the bar. There's an explicit rule against that. I don't know when that was added. I could believe that it wasn't added until after basically people were abusing that. You build up a little whip and then the bar will fly up a lot higher.
Yeah, I mean, you see that even with powerlifting with the deadlift bars. Just the whip in that, it's amazing. I remember the first time I pulled on a deadlift bar, I was like, wow, I don't have to use my legs anymore. This is great.
Yeah.
So what is your view on CrossFit as well? So, sort of like the football question. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think my feelings are mixed. For one thing, CrossFit has been responsible for a lot of people coming to weightlifting. It's before the 2000s. I mean, in this country, we were bad at it for a long time. Nobody really cared about it. And so, when they built weightlifting movements into their stuff, it brought a lot of attention. So that was good. I generally think CrossFit, if it is well coached, it's not bad for people who just want that kind of intermediary between some strength work, some conditioning work, just build some general athleticism. But the real problem with that is the level of quality control, and there's a lot of bad coaches, and I'm sure everyone's seen the videos of CrossFitters doing Olympic lifts for high reps with terrible form, which is not good. But the concept's not terrible, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the idea of cross training is not the craziest notion. Like, you're doing squats for Olympic lifting, and you're never going to be tested on your squat unless you compete in powerlifting.
Yeah.
So that idea isn't horrible. And for strongman, I have to do cardio in some form or fashion because it's necessary. But yeah, and to be fair, again, CrossFit's brought a lot to strongman as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, do you train well, I know you train in your garage now, but you used to train out of a CrossFit box, right?
Yeah, it was my old place back in Pennsylvania was kind of CrossFit. They actually had everything. They had weightlifting, CrossFit, strongman, powerlifting. It was a really, really cool gym. Anyone in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, it's Power Plant Gym. Pretty cool place if you ever want to drop through. But yeah, so they had everything. They had CrossFit. But yeah, and that's one of the places I think that was not so bad because, again, they had coaches there who at least, knew for the most part what they're doing. And I think a lot of CrossFit boxes that have, for example, a weightlifting gym operating out of the same space where the weightlifting coach is helping the CrossFitters with the weightlifting movements. I think that's, that's an example of a good box, where you'll get the proper coaching and learn the movements correctly, but not all of them are like that.
So where are you at now? Like West Coast?
Sorry?
You're on the West Coast now, right?
Yeah. So I'm in the Bay Area, Sunnyvale. Um, so I'm lifting out of my garage for now because the everything's been closed for the pandemic. I have a coach. He used to have a rent out some space at another gym. So it's a bit of a situation now. He's trying to find a new place. So I'm still stuck in the garage gym for now.
Do you know a guy named Nick Beeble from the Barbell Club?
I do. Yeah, he was. I think he graduated a couple of years ahead of me, but yeah, I knew him and saw him around the gym quite a bit.
Yeah, he's in the Bay Area too.
Right. Yeah, I saw it. I was thinking. I do have to hit him up at some point. I say he's running a strongman uh,
Yeah,
gym.
Strongman Club.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I want to get him on here too. He keeps ducking me. So you say you have a coach, but how else do you try to improve your performance? I assume you're mobile. Do you look at your nutrition? Do you look at your flexibility and
Yeah, so it's definitely yes to both. So my attitude towards nutrition, at least the past 2 years, has been a bit of what I call the seafood diet, seafood eat food, because I've struggled for so long with keeping my body weight up. I wouldn't call my diet good. Lots of burgers, pizza, just raw calories, but that's the one thing I do pay attention is the calories, keeping track of my weight, kind of, as well as obviously hitting my protein intake. I'm not super uptight about diet. I don't add supplements pretty much at all. So yeah, calories I find big one, but flexibility definitely. So and I've had some issues recently because I took some breaks and I've had a shoulder issue going on for a little bit that has inhibited a bit of my mobility on my left shoulder. So I definitely kind of pay attention to that. And throughout the day, if things are feeling tight, I do extra stretches before and after every session, at least 15 minutes of just mobility stuff. So that's definitely very important. And it's something you have to maintain or it slowly goes away.
yeah, I gotta say your diet sounds a lot like mine, but 80 pounds lighter.
It works, I may have to clean things up a bit this year. My coach was saying he wants me to instead of I wanted to go up to 67 kilos, but he wants me to stay at 61 another year and kind of fill it out a bit more lean for next year. So I may have to clean things up a bit, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, you are fairly young. You're 24, right?
Yeah, 24 right now.
Yeah. So when is the peak for weightlifting? 'Cause I know for strongman it's usually mid 30s, but it seems like a lot of weightlifters right now are in their mid 20s or
Yeah, so unfortunately, mid to late 20s is so that's one of the things. If you started when you're like 12, then you would definitely expect to hit your peak in your mid to late 20s because it relies so much on power generation, um, which once you kind of hit 30 starts to decline. Um, so if you look at elite weightlifters, like the average age is probably 26, and you have outliers. So like Liu Xiaojun is lifting this year at the Olympics. He's 36, which is a massive anomaly. To be that old and to be going to the Olympics, competing on that stage, it was already an anomaly in 2016 when he was 31. That was already considered old. So it's definitely you hit your peak early, but I also, like I said, I think that having started later, I won't necessarily hit my peak at the same time. Even if my power generation were to go a little downhill, but if I continue developing my strength and stuff like that, it's possible, into my 30s, I could still be improving.
that's interesting. Especially, yeah. Well, also someone like Liu Xiaojun, he trains so heavy and hard. He trains more like a powerlifter, I think, in that it seems like he does a lot of heavy accessory work. Like he'll do his seal rows, he'll do his weighted dips. Do you think that there's something to be said for longevity in terms of training that power? Because you can train your power production. I mean, there's a lot of very good powerlifters well into their 30s. Do you think that that has anything to do with it as opposed to just focusing on technical?
I do think it helps to do the bodybuilding. I would classify, or yeah, again, bodybuilding. I think, let's call it GPP kind of stuff. I think it helps for sure. I mean, there's lots of anecdotal and probably some studies out there to show that in terms of like your joint health, that will help a lot having the extra musculature to stabilize your joints. Um, and yeah, I would say, I mean, I'd say weightlifting training definitely there are a lot of similarities to powerlifting in terms of how we approach the strength lift. You'll even see weightlifters follow powerlifting programs for their squat. So obviously we're not benching, but in terms of pulls and squats, it's similar kind of programming. Same concept, periodization, peaking, and all that stuff. But we then again add the little technique stuff for the actual competition lift.
Yeah, and there are top guys who are legitimately strong as well, not just technical. Like Lasha, his clean pulls at 300 kilograms look like
Yeah,
a toy in his hand. And again, Mikhail Koklayev, he had a very strange deadlift. I don't know if you've ever seen him deadlift, but
I don't think.
he deadlifted as if he was setting up to clean. He had his hips very low like that, and he pulled 900.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like you would look at that setup and you wouldn't think he would be able to. I mean, yes, he can generate power for weightlifting, but you wouldn't think it would translate well to powerlifting in that sense. But
Mhm.
yeah, he got 410, I think was his best pull.
Wow. That's impressive. I found that kind of funny just because I do notice a lot of, well, not a lot, but the weightlifters I've seen who kind of do both powerlifting and weightlifting. I do the same thing with deadlifts in that I kind of just do it like a clean pull, maybe move my hands in a little bit closer, but yeah, because and it's something I don't know, anyone who's not as familiar with Olympic lifting, the mechanics of the clean pull versus the deadlift, although they seem very similar, there's quite a bit of difference in terms of how you start out and actually where the loading is. So it's more quad dominant because we start with our hips lower. Um, and it's just interesting that that he transitioned into strongman and was still deadlifting kind of like a weightlifter.
Well, I think Olympic weightlifters, for the most part, have made the best transition. Like the first winner of World's Strongest Man, Bruce Wilhelm, he was an Olympic weightlifter from the 70s.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's that I believe no, Don Reinhold was a power lifter. But people like Bruce Wilhelm, Mikhail Koklayev, uh, and even to CrossFit as well. Like their latest dominant champion, Matt Frazier, I think he just retired. He was an Olympic weightlifter as well, and then he made a transition to CrossFit. It seems like Olympic weightlifting has better crossover ability. I mean, you were a good example of that as well. You did powerlifting and weightlifting when you were here.
Yeah, I think it is just because there's so many things that, so especially the flexibility, the strength, the power, those are things that are just very generally useful. They'll carry you far in a lot of stuff. So then if you want to transition to powerlifting or you want to transition to strongman, it's a matter of just learning the new technique and, not necessarily having to, you'll probably already have the shoulder flexibility that you need, right? And the same thing with hip flexibility. It probably won't be an issue for you transitioning over, so you can kind of cut out. Whereas just, hypothetically, a power lifter going to strongman might find that some of the overhead stuff is more difficult if they have a tight chest. They haven't done as much heavy direct overhead stuff, or I understand that like hip mobility can be helpful for certain stuff in strongman as well. So that's somewhere where a powerlifter might struggle a little more to transition than a weightlifter.
Yeah, I mean, if you can deadlift 1,000 pounds, but you can't run with the yoke, then what good are you in strongman?
Yep.
Great in powerlifting, but So you are our former treasurer, one of our officers. So what was it like when you were in the club a couple of years ago? Because I spoke with Phil Dalton a couple of days ago about sort of the foundation of the club. You were more of a bridge, so to speak, between his era and my era and the other people my age. So what was that period like for you?
So I mean, it was a lot of fun. So when I came to Cornell as a freshman, I found the barbell Facebook page. And I went to one of their, I think they had a mock powerlifting meet. It may have been that I kind of got to know everyone. Yeah, and I think it's always been a really great, positive club. Lots of great people, knowledgeable people, strong people. So that's how I got to know everyone. We did some powerlifting events, and I think this was relatively new at the time. Was like actually organizing kind of people to go to these powerlifting meets as sort of a team. I think before that they had been doing RPS for a little while,
Yeah.
but we started doing some USAPL meets. There was the Ivy League championships. So that was a lot of fun. We also did, there wasn't as many weightlifters, I think, before I came to Cornell. There was Robbie Kautzman. I never met him, but he was good. He medaled at universities, I think.
You went to Arnold too, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he
you went
lifted.
to Arnold. It's impressive.
So, and there were a couple other people. So Timon was another Olympic lifter around, he was a year above me. And so we had a little more interest in that, and we were actually helping some people learn to do it. So Andrew Chen was someone who had a powerlifting background, and we were kind of teaching him how to do the snatch and the clean and jerk, and he got pretty good at it pretty quickly. So that was something that we kind of added, was more Olympic lifting, going to some Olympic lifting local meets, as well as I want to say my senior year, we went, me and two other guys, and Anthony and Tick, we went to university nationals that year. So yeah, I think that was a transition. There were also, the last year, there was a bit of some issues with various things. I think the club kind of hit a bit of a goalie, but you've been doing a great job of kind of getting it back and rolling. So
thank you. I want to get it back rolling and proper in the fall, and I think we will. Like if we can, my personal big dream is getting the Ivy League championships back up and running. I really want to compete in that and represent the school. And I gotta say, as someone who made archives for the club, open powerlifting is way better than USA weightlifting. In terms of finding results. I was just downloading spreadsheet after spreadsheet of you guys at your collegiate nationals. So if you have any influence with that, please tell them to update their website and make it easier to use.
Sadly, USAW, they're technologically a few decades behind the curve, so maybe a bit. But yeah, and Ivy League championships, that's something that was really cool. I remember when we started going to that, I thought it was really awesome that there was an event that we could go to, and I know for sure one year, I think 2 years in a row, we were the strongest overall school. I forget exactly how they calculated it, by like placements and points, but we actually were the strongest Ivy League school. So take that, Harvard.
Well, you'll be happy to know that one of those guys is still in the club, Christian Petrilli.
I remember him. He's very strong.
Yeah, he's 20 pounds lighter than me. He placed fourth at collegiate nationals this past April. The judges kind of messed with him a little bit. I don't know if you saw our latest, or before you, our post before that of his recap, but
I did see the squat, right? That
was ridiculous.
It looked fine to me. And again, I'm an Olympic lifter, so.
Yeah, I was trying not to respond to Adam and Phil and try to be impartial, but I was like, yeah, that was obvious. I mean, unless it was 91 degrees and not 90 degrees, I don't know what they're looking for. But yeah,
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but he's really, really strong kid.
we
Really.
actually train at the same gym,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
but we haven't run into each other there. But yeah, he's tied with Alex Sandoval for the deadlift record at the school. It's 300 kilograms.
Oh, he pulled 300.
Yeah, he
Cool.
pulled three. I think he pulled 300 in April, maybe in November.
Okay. Wow,
He
that's awesome.
Yeah, he just benched 400 too a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
So,
Damn.
if we can use him, and then I'll be a distant second place behind him. Maybe we can be the strongest Ivy again. 'Cause,
I for sure think it's possible. I mean, I assume last year the gyms were all closed at Cornell.
uh,
Uh,
they opened after what they did was, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but personally, I found it very annoying. They closed in September, but they opened in October. So it was open for the last like 4 or 5 weeks of school because I don't
oh,
I don't think you saw this, but our schedule is really weird in the fall where we went home basically in Thanksgiving and didn't come back till February.
oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So it opened October 1st and then we went home for Thanksgiving. So it was like 5 weeks. And then in the spring they did the same thing where it was closed for February but opened in March. So we had more time though. We had about 2.5 months. But they should have everything open. Hopefully we can get team lift. That's my big thing is I really want team lifts to come back.
Oh, yeah. Those are always great. And yeah, it's a good way to. I mean, first of all, you meet all the people, and sometimes you'll have like someone who hasn't heard of Cornell Barbell. But yeah, you see this team lift kind of going on. They kind of ask, "Hey, what's up?" And that's how you can recruit another strong lifter. So it's
Yeah. It's definitely something I want to get going. It was clearly missing from the past year.
mhm.
It doesn't matter how many websites I make or revitalize the Instagram. You got to be there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So you said you're out in California. What brought you out there?
It's just work. So I'm a software engineer with AWS. So yeah, I moved out here. I applied for the job not knowing where I would end up, but they put me here in the Bay Area. So yeah, that's how I ended up out here.
So how do you manage to balance software engineer? Because I imagine that's a time consuming job. I don't know anything about software coding. I'm an English major, but how do you balance lifting 2 to 3 hours a day and software engineering?
It can be tough at times. I'd say, I mean, it could be a lot worse in terms of I think that my particular job and the organization I'm in, we don't have a particularly high workload, but there's certainly times, certain days, certain weeks that I'm really busy with work, and I do have to make sacrifices on lifting. Especially with how long my sessions take. It can be difficult to make everything fit in, but yeah, I mean, it's really just I think as with lifting in general, it's just about having the dedication to make the time, and when you miss a day, not kind of falling into the trap of, oh, I'll miss another one, stuff like that. Just staying persistent is the big thing, and for me, eating enough.
So do you think that lifting has helped you figure out how to stay consistent more than something you might learn in school? Because obviously you're smart. You have to be a software engineer. It's again not something I can do. But you know, there are certain things you learn in the weight room that you just don't get in the classroom. Do you think that sort of discipline came from one side of your life as opposed to the other?
Yeah, I would agree that I do think that lifting kind of taught me something about the persistence, and because like you said, you cannot get good at lifting without being consistent, being persistent, and just having the grit to kind of push through bad days, grind through a PR or whatever it is. And I do think that's something that not necessarily lifting, but any athletic kind of sport or activity. If you stick with it, you do learn something. I think it helps in other aspects of life as well.
That's good. That's certainly good to hear. So I've kept you for about almost 50 minutes now. I assume you're going to be eating soon, so I've just got one last thing to ask of you. Speaking of how lifting helps you, well, I guess advice. So if you could go back to a younger 51 kilogram Geoffrey, maybe freshman, say freshman year or so, what do you think you'd tell yourself, and how do you think you might point yourself in the right direction? Tell yourself, nothing, and keep going. What do you think you'd say?
um, Other than telling myself to eat more, I I think I told myself to stay more consistent in that there were a couple periods of time where schoolwork got pretty bad or whatever, things were going on in my life. And I would take like 6 months and I didn't lift. And that was really where I saw the most regression. I'd lose a lot of weight, lose a lot of strength. And then, when I finally get it together and try and get back into lifting, it'd be depressing for like a month or two while I'm rebuilding all that strength I lost. And you're like, I used to be able to squat this for 5, and now it's really feels like a heavy single. So I think I wish I had been more consistent, and even when things were rough, even going once, twice a week, squatting 80%, it's better than nothing. And so I think that would have maybe helped.
Well, that's all I've got for you tonight. And I say this to all of our alumni, and it's true every time. But if you ever find yourself in Ithaca, especially during the school year, you're more than welcome to come to Teagle. I'd love to have you, especially because no one knows how to Olympic lift now. So I know you used to do seminars. If you want to do another one again, we can get one set up.
For sure. I'd love to visit Ithaca again sometime. And if I do, I'll definitely let you know and see if we can schedule something.
Okay. Would love to have you out there. Well, enjoy your dinner. Good luck getting up to 90 kilos. I think that's what you should be at. But
Sounds good. Thanks.
all right. Have a good night.
You too.